service members were found deceased over the last 10 years who were first designated as absent without leave, AWOL, or unauthorized absence instead of duty status whereabout unknown. The amendment comes in response to the tragic death of Seaman Angelina despite early warnings from her colleagues, friends, and family of her disappearance. The U.S. Navy classified Resendez as unauthorized absence instead of duty status whereabouts unknown. This report is the first step to preventing the mislabeling of service members who go missing while serving. And the Congressman said, I am pleased to see that my amendment received overwhelming support. The report is an important step toward ensuring that any service member who goes missing receives a possible classification and investigatory response, which can be the crossroads between life or death, said Congressman Gonzalez. This is not a partisan issue. We have a responsibility to protect our brave service members who take an oath to defend our country. I thank my colleagues for recognizing the critical. Now the key is, this has to still go to conference for the Senate to agree to that amendment. And the key is, once they get that data, if it passes and the President signs the NDAA with that amendment, what are they going to do with that data? So that's the question we have to ask. Okay, and been real helpful, but also Senator Warner from Virginia, where Norfolk Naval Station is located and where the murder happened, and his assaults, has been very helpful, and also Senator Kane. Senator Kane actually personally met with us, and Senator Warner had a staffer there, but they actually sent a letter to the Navy separately, and Congressman Vicente Gonzalez sent a letter to the Navy asking specific questions, but the Navy hasn't really been forthcoming. And they had a timeline of what they said happened, but they haven't been forthcoming in the questions specifically asked. They basically, and I saw a copy of the letter that they responded, but they said, we're looking at about these 5 or 6 areas of concern, and if we find anything wrong, we're going to go ahead and fix them. Thank you for your concern, and we're sorry about the death of Culinary Specialist Angelina Resendez, but it's not an adequate response. The staffers told me that they're going to go back because it's a very poor response for that. But they've been real helpful, and they want to get down to the bottom of it. Again, to summarize, we need the Navy to say, what is wrong with your recruiting process? Why didn't these red flags, weren't these red flags not known about? He should never come to the Navy. If somebody wants to come to the Navy and they have a sealed juvenile record, because that could really affect, and all this probably could have been prevented. It's really unfortunate. And then why the Navy was slow in all these investigations, and why they move it from one ship to another. Miss Esme Castle will come and talk about that a little more in detail. Right now, what I'd like to do is we need to have a foundational understanding of what transpired and what happened and what the Navy should be doing. And we have an expert that's going to come up here, Keta Rodriguez, who is a retired Marine officer, and also she was selected to be on the independent committee when Vanessa Guillen was murdered at Fort Hood. She was appointed to that, and they came up with like 68 or 69 recommendations, and I don't think she's going through all of them, but she's going to tell you the background on that, because we need the Navy to follow up with what they're supposed to be doing. So Keta, come on up, and we thank you for coming out today.
Good afternoon. I hate to be here under these circumstances because we've been here before over and over and over again. As you heard, my name is Keta Rodriguez. I'm a proud native of San Antonio and a Marine Corps veteran who served 20 years. I enlisted in December of 1991, just months after Tail Hook, when faith in our military's ability to protect women was already shaken. That moment shaped my experience in the military, and it's never left me, because I see that as an issue of leadership and an issue of military readiness. In 2020, after the murder of Specialist Vanessa Guillen at Fort Hood, I served on the Fort Hood Independent Review Committee. Our work was clear: identify the systemic failures that led to Vanessa's death, and make recommendations to make sure that no other family would have to endure that pain. It is unfortunate that we are seeing another family have to endure that pain. We issued a report with 70 recommendations across 5 key areas: leadership and command climate, which is holding leaders accountable and using surveys and really understanding what is going on within a command to expose toxic environments; reporting systems, restoring trust by professionalizing victim advocates, protecting against retaliation, and ensuring independence from conflicted commanders; investigations, ending sloppy or delayed cases by creating clear missing person protocols and improved investigator training; family communication, guaranteeing that a liaison officer and transparency in real time. And again, we have seen this failure. Systemic prevention, treating harassment, assault, and violence not as isolated incidents, but as evidence of a broken culture. The Army accepted every single one of those findings. It reorganized its criminal investigation division, rewrote its missing person protocols, and created climate assessment teams. Was it perfect? No. But the Army publicly committed to systemic change. Congress also acted. The I Am Vanessa Guillen Act was incorporated into the fiscal year 2022 National Defense Authorization Act. That law made sexual harassment a crime under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. It took decisions about protecting sexual assault, murder, domestic violence, and related offenses outside of the chain of command and gave them to independent prosecutors called Special Trial Counsel. This was a critical step. One thing that we learned from this, from our time on the Fort Hood Independent Review Committee, was that oftentimes victims were afraid to report what was going on for fear of retaliation within the command, being ridiculed, being subject to things that really they should not have been subject to, especially after their experience. These were historic reforms. Real victories won because Vanessa's family refused to be silent. But unfortunately, here's the hard truth. Those reforms were not fully implemented across the services. The Army made changes because Vanessa's case was theirs. But the Navy, the Air Force, the Marine Corps, the Space Force, to my knowledge, none of them have conducted the same level of a Fort Hood style independent review of their climate, their investigative practices, or their treatment of families as we have seen in this case. They benefited from the NDAA, yes, but they did not take a deeper look at culture and accountability that the Army was forced to take, and that needs to change. I was asked during this time at a congressional hearing what could be done, what one thing could be done to prevent this, to finally address this issue that unfortunately seems to plague our military for generations. And the one thing that I said was, you have to change the culture. Legal frameworks help, but until you change the culture, you are not going to stop these incidents from happening. And that brings us to today. The tragic death of Seaman Angelina Resendiz. Angelina was only 21 years old, from Brownsville, as you just heard. She was serving aboard the USS James Williams when she went missing in May. Nearly 2 weeks later, her body was discovered in that wooded area near Norfolk. And the sailor now charged with her murder, Jeremiah Copeland, as you just heard Larry Ramos say, should have never been in uniform. As a juvenile, he entered a diversion program for secretly reporting a sexual encounter. He never completed the required counseling as part of his deferred adjudication. Around the same time, a classmate accused him of sexual assault. In the Navy, he has official charging documents alleged that he assaulted and strangled a sailor in 2024, just last year, aboard the USS Harry Truman. He allegedly sexually assaulted a shipmate impaired by alcohol and wrongfully recorded and shared explicit images. In April 2025, he allegedly assaulted an intimate partner. And in May, just before Angelina's disappearance, he allegedly committed another non-consensual sexual act. This is not somebody who should have been transferred to another command. He should have not been wearing uniform in the first place. These aren't all rumors, these are documented allegations, and yet he was permitted to enlist, he was allowed to transfer, he was allowed to remain in uniform. This is exactly what we meant at Fort Hood when we said that culture kills. Let's measure this against the reforms that we called for in 2020. Right? As it relates to leadership and climate, his record should have disqualified him. Leadership ignored it. Reporting, the Navy's victims did not trust the system enough to stop him before it was too late. When it comes to investigations, when Angelina missed muster, she was first marked as an unauthorized absence before being treated as a missing person. This is the exact failure that we flagged at Fort Hood. The family communication. Her mother, Esme, my sincere condolences, and I am so sorry that you were experiencing this, was left without clear answers, just as Vanessa's family was. Systemic prevention. Copeland was treated an individual problem instead of evidence of a deeper cultural failure. Admit, but publicly to implement reform. The Navy has not. And now another Latina daughter is gone. So today I stand with LULAC as a member of LULAC Concilio Zapatista myself, and with Esme to demand more than words. We demand justice for Angelina through a full, fair prosecution and transparency. We demand accountability for Navy leaders who ignored red flags. And we demand transparency for her family and for the public. And most of all, we demand that the Navy conduct an independent review, just as we did at Fort Hood with the Army. Just as the Army faced in 2020, and the Army did relieve 13 individuals in Vanessa's chain of command for failure to act. Just as the Army faced it in 2020, the Navy must now face a full, independent review of its enlistment practices, reporting systems, investigative protocols, and family communications. If the Army needed it after Vanessa, the Navy needs it after Angelina. Because this is not just about two Latinas. This is about whether everyday parents in America can trust the military to keep their sons and daughters safe. In the Marine Corps, we were taught that leadership means protecting your people. It means that you carry the burden. You never leave your Marines behind. That is the standard. Vanessa deserved that standard. Angelina deserved that standard. Every single soldier, airman, Marine, Guardian, Coast Guardsman deserves that standard. Until every branch lives up to it, we have not only failed our service members, we have failed our nation. So let us honor Vanessa and Angelina, not just with our voices, but with action, accountability, enforcement of the reforms that have already passed, and the courage to demand a Navy independent review now. Thank you.
I'm honored to call you a friend, and she is a Marine because she's always a Marine because she is retired, but she knows she's still serving, and you are still serving. I am proud to call you a friend. I'd like to present you a challenge coin for thank you for your service. Thank you. She said it all, and I'm glad we brought her up today because I knew that she was one of the ones that was vehemently engaged on this committee. And again, the Navy needs to have a committee again. They don't want to, but we're going to encourage the Congress people to there. And I'm really happy that we have one of representatives from Congressman Castro's office. So I asked him to make sure that he gives our good friend Congressman Castro the input. But Vicente Gonzalez will, I guarantee you that, and then we'll go back to Senator Gillibrand, because he's a champion of this, and also Senator Warner and Senator Kane and the other Congress people. Now, it's my pleasure to bring up the mother of the murdered sailor. She's become a good friend, and we're here to support her. Like I said, it's not what LULAC wants, it's what she wants. So she's going to come up here and, from the heart, talk about her daughter and what she's done to make sure that we get justice and accountability. Esme, coming up.
My name is Esmeralda Cantu Castle. Angelina is my daughter. We miss her very much, but we love her. She was just loved by all of us, her friends, family. People we didn't even know her reach out and let me know how she touched them in some way. Okay. This is a tragedy that happened, and it was absolutely preventable. They knew what was happening. NCIS knew what was happening. The Truman knew what was happening. The Williams knew what was happening. Everyone knew what was happening. The only people who did not know what was happening were the service members, the people doing their jobs, the people trusting their leadership to guide them, to protect them. And they failed over and over again. And I think about it, why they would not talk to me. Because they knew already who he was, what he's done, and what was happening right before their eyes. They could have stopped it. It was absolutely preventable. Absolutely preventable. She demands justice. That what happened to her happened to each and every one of these. Gillian, they knew. They knew what was happening, and no one protected her. All these women right here were assaulted sexually by fellow service members, and no one protected them. Their lives are gone. And we're their voice now. We are their voice. They're not going to be forgotten. And if they have been, we're bringing it back to the memories of all those who wronged them. You are not going to be able to sleep at night without remembering their faces, without remembering their names. And when you speak their names, you should tremble with consciousness of the things that you could have done, but you chose. You chose not to. And that's what kills the most, right? Because it was a choice.
This is something in Spanish. Me amo,
Mi amo.
a mi hija.
Mi hija.
Angelina.
Angelina. And I agree with Larry. I agree with everything that was just said today. Inaction is still action. Not choosing is still choosing. And I don't think that our children should be joining the military. They're not safe. Unless there's a guarantee in writing when they sign that contract that their livelihood, that they're going to be protected. If that's not in place, they shouldn't be joining, because this is just a little bit of what you see. There's so much that happens that we don't know, and we're never going to know. And it's made that way. They're in a closed universe, and that shouldn't be. Because the military is not the military without the people. The people make the military. And if there's a failure in the military, it's a failure in the leadership that maintains them. And that's our Congress. Our congressmen, our senators, they are responsible for the military. They are responsible for regulating them. And if there's a failure, it starts with them. They know how it can be fixed. I believe that each branch knows exactly what they need to do to fix the problems that they are having. But because they are protected and they're shielded, there is no accountability. And so we have injustice with no access to justice. And that's all we're asking for, is justice. For Angie, and for all the women and men who've been harmed, just for serving, just because they chose to serve their country and their leadership decided that they, they're protecting an image over a service member. They're protecting the culture, the way of doing things over the people who are giving their lives. And I love her. And these women here, I look at them every day. They're my life now. And we're not stopping until change happens. Not just in the Navy, but in every single branch. There needs to be a movement in how they're going to make things better from here on out.
As we're a team, and I want to thank you for coming up. One person makes a difference if we work together. That's what that coin means. Thank you. Ana Luisa Tapia is going to come up for a quick minute to talk about, she had a lot to do with the Vanessa Guillen case at the Fort Hood. So she's going to come up here. She's a member of LULAC. Then after that, what we're going to do is we're going to bring the other Esme up and Keta and myself. If anybody has any questions from the media. Okay, Ana Luisa.
As you can see, I don't have a script, I don't have anything written. What I will tell you is this: we speak English, Spanish, and most of all, we speak justice. And we need justice for Angelina. We need justice, and we need it today. This is not a partisan issue. This is a community issue. This is our roots. Nuestras raíces están bajo peligro. Tenemos que hacer algo, tenemos que presentarnos. If we talk about it and make it a news issue, that's one thing. But for us to go to the halls of Congress and ask those that ran to represent us to come and step up into that position and do no less than bring justice. And not only that, make sure for the next generation of service members. Notice I didn't say Marines or Army. I said service members. So those service members are going to I'm so upset. They're going to have guidelines and they're going to have rules, and not only are they going to be written in ink, they're going to have to be walked out by every single commander and service member from the top to the bottom and the bottom up. Thank you.
Keta, Esme, myself, we'll just come up. If the media has any questions before we close it, we'll be happy to answer them if we know the answers. And while they're coming up here, before I forget, I want to thank everybody coming here. Y'all are true patriots, the people that are here today. And Rodney, thank you for the Facebook Live, getting that set up. But all of y'all are patriots, so thank you for coming up today. Yeah. All right, media, any questions?
Sí, ¿nos podrían dar un resumen en español de la petición que están haciendo?
Lo voy a tratar. Disculpe porque mi español es medio mocho. Pero lo que estamos haciendo es, necesitamos justicia para Angelina. Ya sabemos que lo que le pasó a Vanessa Guillen se está repitiendo. Hay unos, el Army implementó unas de las recomendaciones que hicimos en el Fort Hood Independent Review Committee, pero eso no fue entre todas las fuerzas armadas, nada más del Army. Y solo que una de las cosas que pasaron en ese tiempo, pasaron esta vez también. Y queremos que todo el servicio, todos los servicios, todas las fuerzas armadas sean igual y que tenemos que tener justicia para todos los que ve aquí y especialmente para Angelina.
Después de esta petición que están ustedes haciendo, ¿cuál es el siguiente paso?
El siguiente paso es vamos a comenzar con los elegidos, los que están en el Congreso, y también queremos what are some of the next steps aside from this? También queremos que el Navy haga lo mismo lo que hizo el Army con esa una comisión independiente. Entonces, lo que queremos que ellos hagan una investigación, pero que sea independiente del Navy.
Esta ocasión, ¿por qué decidieron hacer?
Guardate que el media,
Ya, también queremos que todos ustedes que están ahí, que no se olviden de este caso. Tenemos que seguir con esta historia y no queremos que se muera.
¿Por qué decidieron esta ocasión hacer este evento aquí en San Antonio?
Bueno, pues el LULAC, el presidente de los veteranos, de la comisión de veteranos, es Larry Romo, y él está aquí en San Antonio. Y Esme, la mamá de Angelina, ella vino de Brownsville, solo que ella es de aquí, de Texas, y solo que para nosotros era propio. También hay una convención de asuntos sexuales en el servicio aquí en San Antonio esta semana. Es mañana.
Esme, you are rightfully a grieving mother, and you could grieve privately and nobody would blame you, but how come you're using this experience to shine light for all these women, not just your daughter?
Because this is injustice. And injustice anywhere is a threat to injustice everywhere. And as a law student, this is what we do, right? This is what we're trained to do. When you see it, you don't stay quiet. You have to use your voice. You have to speak out. You have to fight. And I remember Vanessa, and I remember the stories, and I remember hearing it and you know, feeling bad for the family, but it not affecting me. And it should have affected me. And it affects me now. And this needs to be the last. No one should have to go through this. And if all I ever do is make my daughter the last woman that's a victim to this type of violence in the military, then then we win. Then that's the goal. That's all we want, is just for this to end.
Have you connected with any of these families?
Yes, there's a few of these families. I didn't know who they were, and slowly and surely they've reached out to me, and some of them are still advocating on different levels of justice, right? Because some of them are trying to go through the courts, and they're barred. You can't go through the courts. If you're an active duty service member and something happens to you in the military, where normally a person can sue, right, a tort for negligence, wrongful death, you can't do that in the military. You can't do that as an active duty service member. And so some of these families are advocating that way, because these women, their lives were taken due to the negligence of their command.
Can you tell us a little bit about Angelina, her personality, and how do you remember her?
Fun, loving, bubbly, can have an attitude sometimes if she needed to, but just a happy person, always looking for the good. She saw good in everything and in everybody. And you know, as a culinary specialist, she was just a creative person. And in any kind of artistic thing that she did, she excelled in. Or she loved drawing, music, writing. And so she was just a beautiful person, and she loved life and was appreciative of every moment of it, and shared that with people around her. So when you come into contact with Angie, you're going to be elevated. That's the kind of person she was.
If she could see how hard you're fighting in her name, what would you want her to know?
And we love her. And I talked to her. I said, I pray and meditate, and like, baby, I am your voice. Like, what is it? And the one thing that is like, you know, they know what's happening within their command. They know who they have, you know, as service members, and that's not something that should continue. If they know who they have in their command and that they're unsafe, that needs to change. It should not. We shouldn't even have to be saying that needs to change. It should never happen. But I just want her to know that I love her.
Captain, how many people did they fire after your report? The Navy hasn't fired anybody, but how many people did they fire after your report?
They fired 13 individuals in the chain of command, from the top all the way down, specifically in Vanessa Guillen's direct chain of command. And to this date, no one has been fired that we know of in Angelina's chain of command.
We can see the frustration coming off of you. How hard is it to have to be going through this for another family, another time?
It's extremely frustrating. It's disappointing. You know, as a service member myself, who considers myself a leader, to see such a failure of leadership is so disappointing. You know, I learned you look out for your Marines. You know your Marines. You look out for their welfare, and the Navy clearly failed to look out for the welfare in this case, and we just continue to see this happen. The fact that the Fort Hood Independent Review Committee made all these recommendations, that this issue was not unique to the Army. It's not unique to the Army, and every single branch of the military should have implemented like procedures. In some ways, I think that had they done some of this, we may not be standing here today. For example, as it relates to reporting a missing service member, that protocol, if they had done it immediately, we may not be standing here today. Had they created a culture where people felt okay to come and report, it's still unclear whether or not some of these things were actually reported beforehand. But if people are not reporting and it's coming out now, which is something that we saw at Fort Hood, people would have come out and reported this, and if the command had taken it seriously and taken action to prevent this service member from moving to a different command or even enlisting in the first place, we may not be standing here today. So it's extremely frustrating and disappointing.
Would you call it a systemic issue?
It's absolutely a systemic issue. Yes, it's systemic, and as I mentioned earlier, there are legal frameworks that will help some of these, just institutional processes and procedures, but at the end of the day, this is a cultural problem, and this needs to be addressed from the very beginning of when someone's coming into the military, until the time that they leave.
I'm going to acknowledge Lupe Torres here, because she's the national president for women, and we want to protect men and women, but we have a lot of consuls around the country, so I'm going to ask Lupe. I'm going to work closely with her, and we're going to make sure that we have all our consuls work with the congressmen and senators in our states to make sure that we get that independent review committee that we want, so the Navy, we can assess where the Navy went wrong. Lupe, that's Lupe Torres there. And thank you, Lucidami Clark, for what you do for veterans. I see she's here, our county clerk, so thank you for coming. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, well, thank you, and they'll be available if you want to do one-on-ones. I appreciate it. Thank you for coming, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Rodney, again. And thank you, everybody else, for coming today. Pete, Bernal, thank you for coming.